We're going to start with this video.
To whom it may concern, my name is Sandra Licon.
Mi nombre es Irving Prieto.
My name is Amy Belair.
I own a small family-operated dairy farm
I own a small oyster farm
Y soy un pequeño productor de vegetales orgánicos
in West Texas.
in South Texas.
en la comunidad de Socorro, Texas.
I am writing to you today with an urgent matter.
You might be thinking, what does a dairy owner have anything to do with an oyster farmer or a permaculturist?
We have a story to tell you about the people who brought us together.
The economic, social, and health impact of our work, and how our small operations will change the world.
We need you to listen before it is too late.
So like north is this way, we have the northeast corner, southeast corner, and then we have like corner.
The Regional Food Business Center is a federal program that aims to help agricultural producers and small food businesses,
so that these businesses can have access to the tools they need to continue to grow and build a thriving business.
The chile con queso and the tamales. What else for you, sir? That'll do. Okay, that'll be $21.49. We've been now in San Elizario 4 generations of Licones working, making the asadero by hand. And we also have a free petting zoo that's offered to our community. It's wonderful to hear that when they come down and they bring their little ones and they'll say, well, I remember coming, down here when my grandfather was alive, and this is a memory that I have.
Aquí trabajamos, mi hermano gemelo y yo. Y entre los dos corremos la granja.
My husband and I were both born and raised here in Rockport. We're first-generation farmers. Not only are we putting healthy food on the table, but this is also regenerative for the environment. And I think there's also the economic benefits of new farms like ours. There are new jobs available that weren't available before. And all of that stuff it's really exciting and important for small communities here on the Texas coast.
Toda la cantidad, la salud, la mejora en la salud, la economía se queda en la localidad, la economía circular.
A big challenge for small farms and small producers is finding financing or having the working capital to just keep going. That's sink or swim kind of stuff.
The dairy industry is slowly dying out because the dairymen are not getting paid what that their milk is worth, and they can't keep sustaining themselves. And most likely for us, it'll be the end.
Tenemos que ver que el alimento es el motor de nuestros día con día. Entonces, si tiene mucho impacto, hay que rescatar, hay que ampliarlo.
We were invited to an agricultural meeting by one of our fellow friends, and that's where we met Miss Ruby. And she's just amazing. I remember sitting there with my son, and as she's giving her presentation, we kept thinking, wow, there are places out there that exist that help farmers. As farmers, we really don't ask for help, and we don't ask for money. Like I said, we will figure it out. And she says, but this is grant money that you can apply.
We had a $15,000 grant that was available for small agribusiness owners to apply for.
And then I got intimidated because I had been thinking, I've never even applied for a grant. How do you apply for a grant? She said, oh no, but you're not alone. We'll walk through this.
Producers don't often identify themselves as business owners. They're very skilled at the production agricultural piece. However, there is a support that's needed in providing tools for them to strengthen their business operations, for them to make those 5-year projections, or even think about the long-term goal.
A grant like this through the Regional Food Business Center allows a small farm like ours to keep providing those environmental benefits that are like very real, tangible benefits for this community.
Nos iba el grant, nos iba a apoyar para tener equipamiento para el manejo de la cosecha, refrigeradores, un área de lavado, unos congeladores.
When you are a small producer and you're still in startup mode, it is a long, hard road to keep things afloat, to keep things moving. And a grant like this puts a light at the end of the tunnel.
In order for this work to continue, funding is absolutely essential. Somebody needs to be willing to make that initial investment to get the ball rolling.
We wouldn't survive without our farmers and ranchers and all of the work they do to make food accessible to our communities. If you really want to change the world, invest local.
As farmers, we prefer to stay in the background and be wallflowers, but when need be, we do speak up.
We need people who understand the importance of this work to step up and get involved, especially if they can support with funding.
To whom it may concern,
A quien corresponda.
To whom it may concern, Texas needs small producers. We are the ones working hard to provide fresh, locally produced, healthy food options for our communities.
we wouldn't still be in existence all these years if it weren't for amazing people like Miss Ruby Aguayo who help connect and support people.
This program allowed us to keep doing the work we believe in.
Al retomar la agricultura local, pues la gente tiene poder y autonomía sobre su salud, sobre su economía, sobre su medio ambiente, sobre su futuro.
I genuinely believe we must leave this world better than we found it. We live by this belief and feel that every day we help others thrive, so we all thrive.
We need programs like regional food business centers to support and lift up small food producers.
As farmers, we are a beautiful, beautiful force to be reckoned with.
This is separate permitted source. Our main source of every husband on a farm today. We are a startup within a startup.
Thank you for all of the good work that you do, Amy Belair.
Sandra Licon.
Irving Prieto.
An investment in this program is an investment in every American's future.
Okay. Okay. Well, hey, you know, what you guys just saw here was a video that encapsulates the theme of this panel. This panel here, in this panel, we'll explore common barriers with food systems that prevent small farmers and ranchers from scaling up their operations. And why small and local area farms? Some of the reasons why we already talked about today, right? These are the enterprises who contribute to our local economy, who tend to practice some of the regenerative and sustainable farming practices that you saw in the video and that you'll hear about today. These are the operations who are more likely to treat their farm workers and their partners fairly, providing them dignified workspaces, in part because they work together with them. And so our discussion is going to highlight some of the gaps and to try and examine some practical solutions to help overcome some of the challenges. We have with us today two very distinguished guests. I'd like to introduce Diana Padilla, who established Padilla Farms, or Yahweh All Natural Farm and Garden in 2008. It's located in the RGV here in Harlingen, and it officially converted to USDA certified organic back in 2014. And now it's doing certified regenerative diversified farming and ranching, and it's one of the few farms in the region that participate in what we call community CSA. It's community supporting agriculture, excuse me, with a mission to increase the local food grown here and providing that food into some of the areas that Yahweh serves, in particular some of the impoverished areas in that region, and they provide them these vegetable boxes at reduced rates. They do this through in partnership with an organization called the Holistic Organic Practical Education for Small Farm Sustainability, or HOPE for SFS, which was founded by Diana Padilla as a community-based organization. Her goal was to provide mentoring and training to beginning farmers and ranchers, limited resources farmers, and youth in organic and organic agriculture and agribusiness. And under that leadership, they've developed farm cooperatives, they've assisted producers in retaining farmland, and created opportunities for limited resource families to increase their income by connecting them with CSAs, by retail opportunities and wholesale buyers, and with other financial programs. We also have Ruby Aguayo. Ruby, you were on the film, right?
Yes,
so
that
we got
was me.
Movie stars in our presence. She has a background in community health and business administration and brings experience working with small businesses and local communities. Now, her work focuses on building strong relationships and understanding community needs and identifying any of those gaps that impact access and resources and opportunities. And she's especially interested in addressing challenges that affect farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. As a bilingual speaker in English and Spanish, she is committed to making sure that people feel heard and can take part in conversations that affect our communities. So welcome, Deanna and Ruby. So we're going to dive in. You guys bring a diverse set of experiences. You know, Deanna from a producer and organizer perspective, and then Ruby, you bring in that voice as a community advocate, as a connector. You know, I wanted to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Ruby. What do you see as the kind of the biggest infrastructure bottleneck that it limits farmers and producers, like we saw in the video, limits their ability to scale up what they do?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think there's some very practical ones that we might all, that might come to mind immediately, right? You think about your processing tools, your equipment, right? Cold storage, things that I know I identified just speaking with producers and trying to support them in their agribusiness development. I think the RFBC, one of my favorite parts of the RFBC was their implementation of the BDC model, or the Business Coordinator Development Model. And what this means is that they sent out sort of these intermediaries, right? I am a business development coordinator, and what my role was going out into the communities and conducting needs assessments. So I could be truly informed about what are those barriers, what are the challenges that agribusiness, small to mid-sized agribusiness owners are facing, and what solutions we can provide. And so I think this was meaningful for me because it's very different when you assess needs or you have a conversation with somebody and they tell you, these are my problems, these are the tools I need, and you send them to another place. You sort of do like the cold referral thing, or hey, there's like a bookshelf of pamphlets and you can read through them and you'll find the solutions. BDCs were these intermediaries between the institutions that provide resources, whether it's through grants, technical assistance, or other types of support, and the farmers themselves. And it's very relationship-based. There's an open door policy, and it's tailored, not prescriptive. Really try to understand, I think also what the culture in the community is, how to build trust, and to provide solutions that are truly addressing those problems and needs.
Now, Deanna, you have a perspective from somebody who's both a producer and who works with a lot of farmers. How would you answer that question? What do you think is the biggest bottleneck or the limiting factor for the success of these producers that you work with, and for yourself?
You know, they say that get big or get out. Well, a lot of people start as hobby farms, and it's just like anybody else going to school. Is where they're going to learn, and then they become a small farmer, and that's where it becomes difficult. You need labor to expand, and that becomes difficult. You need equipment to expand, and that becomes difficult. You need to market your product, and the logistics of working with the schools, with the restaurants, becomes difficult. So it is probably can be addressed more by cooperative in that middle section, so that the shared use equipment, the shared use labor, the shared use storage is needed in that middle, because those three items can just make you stay that hobby farm and never become that commercial farm.
I've worked with some of the farmers as well, people who are trying to scale up, and a lot of it is that, you remember I worked with a farm who were trying to grow and sell to wholesale, right? Wholesale, for those of you who don't know, is like the big box stores that will buy and have all sorts of requirements. And this person spent a lot of money harvesting their product, and it was in the refrigerated truck, and then it got rejected by the buyer, saying, hey, you don't meet the specifications that we expect. This is what we want our carrots to look like. This is what our cilantro to look like, and we're not going to buy it. And then this farmer was just left with a bunch of cilantro.
Your previous panel was talking about the schools, and what they didn't talk about was we need to change policy. How come the school policy is to buy the way they buy? That can be changed. Why is it that in every situation, the one that gets the least is the farmer? We were talking about the schools and the logistics, but nobody said anything about the farmer. How is the farmer supposed to take his money, grow something, not have a contract, wait till it's grown, and then compete? And then you have 10 to 15 days for that product. You have invested in your labor, in your storage, in your packaging, and then they say, no, you didn't meet what we were looking for. That's impossible for a small farmer to compete.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that before, and of course, like we said earlier, the system is designed that way, right? Almost always, or at least historically, it's the big intermediaries that get the contracts, the Sodexos, Cisco and all those who have this scale to meet the demand of the school districts or any buyer in particular. Remember in the past we've had a panel on with two farmers and two chefs, and the question is, well, why don't chefs buy more food? And I'm just curious, from that perspective, have you tried selling to like chefs, and what has been the barriers there?
Well, chefs are used to having their items in advance where they can just call and get their stuff ordered. They're in a unique situation, and budget is another situation. And the farmers are different. The farmers need to know that they're going to buy the product. So it's a communication that we need to work with. We were working with restaurants, and we did pretty good. But it takes a lot of logistic work, sitting down with the chefs, deciding how much do they use, how often do they use it, and tailoring everything that you grow for them, but then getting a commitment in writing that they're going to buy it. Everything is based on that. Trust isn't there. The farmer loses out always. And that shouldn't be, because from the bottom to the top, you need that farmer. So if we don't respect that farmer, if we think of them the last, they don't need the contract. They're the ones that get the least amount of money. You're going to continue to lose that farmer.
Yeah. Well, let's imagine these relationships, we forge these successful relationships, and we have a grower that wants to scale up, to maybe sell to more restaurants, or actually sell to meet the demand of a school district, for example. That scaling often requires upfront investment, as you talked about in the video. And so I'm just curious, Ruby, what have you heard from some of your clients or your participants on the challenges that they have faced or that you have seen in them accessing that capital for the equipment, or accessing a loan for a new piece of property, or or a grant, for example. And how do some of the current funding structures fall short for the small scale producers that you guys, the regional businesses that you guys are trying to serve?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I identified is that there are needs for very basic practical things, right? You can send somebody to a funding opportunity, but then how do they develop a good narrative? How do they strengthen their business plan and communicate it the way that is going to position them strongly in that competitive application? And I think this is where BDCs, or business development coordinators, are so helpful. They're that middleman, right? Empowering. My door is open. Come ask me questions. I can't fill out the application for you, but what do you have concerns about? Are you feeling confident in applying? What are parts of your business that in applying you're identifying that you need to develop, or you need to sharpen, or maybe you need to clear up that direction, right? Because farmers, agribusiness owners, they have a lot of great ideas. I've learned so much, and I think a lot of it is sort of honing in, what is your direction here? What are you trying to accomplish? And how do you position yourself strongly? You need grant writing skills, right? What resources and tools can BDCs connect them to very basically, submit an application that is going to be clear and strong. And I think there's many other things that are involved in that, right? But this business development part it needs work and investment, and farmers are amazing at the agricultural piece, right? But what I saw is that they don't often identify themselves as business owners. And so empowering them and having that open door policy is something that there's a need for, and I identified very clearly. An advocate, right? Somebody to walk along with.
So I'm going to ask you just a follow-up question, because I think some of the challenges is we always measure farms by how much they produce, right? And that production is always just like, well, how many pounds can you make per week, or how many of this? And the thing about small farms, as we saw in the video, is a lot of the benefits we get from small farms aren't in production. They're in job creation. They're in providing dignified workspaces for people. They're in educational opportunities when students take tours of that, right? And so, for example, we run a 5-acre farm as part of the university, and if you measured us by just the amount of produce we make, we're terrible at farming, right? However, if you add in the value that we provide for training, for a safe space for young people to explore and question, it's invaluable, right? And I know that's embedded in some of your operations and the people you work with. My question, Ruby, is how do you get that in a grant application? And is there money to support that?
As far as like technical assistance to support the grant development and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a great example. And you mentioned when we last spoke about like, a lot of the clients you're working with are entering into like agritourism type opportunities, which is not normal in a portfolio for a farm, tourism as a form of income. But it also provides a service for the community to learn a little bit about where their food comes from, to ask about questions like, how is this grown? What is organic and how is that better, right? Those kinds of learning opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have going on there where you work and expand on what we were talking about earlier?
Absolutely. So in entering the farming community and being educated and learning a lot, I identify that, excuse me, there's barriers that they're going to take time to overcome. And it's a process. It's keeping hope and continuing to be an advocate for policy change, doing work that influences how some of these programs are built. And so I think I landed in a place where I was like, I need to get creative about how to support farmers in my area. And what I started doing is joining meetings or getting involved with local entrepreneurship clubs in the city and really putting in their faces like, hey, farmers are business owners too. They're entrepreneurs. They're agribusiness owners. It's a very unique niche of business, right? Because farmers have unique needs compared to different industries. But I started involving myself and bringing these people out here and saying, hey, these people need business development support as well. And through there, we started having farm tours. And it's been really great. I engaged with a local entrepreneurship club that has no farmers come to their meetings. That's a problem. My goal is to make those connections, and as well as engaging with the local tourism agency, Visit El Paso. And with collaborating with them, we've been able to host a farm tour the last Sunday of every month. The last Sunday we had about 40 people in this tour bus. And literally, I think it made me a tour guide, which I never applied for. But this is my effort in highlighting agribusiness, local agriculture, but also teaching the community about the food system. Where does your food come from? And them getting in touch with that thought, like, I think highlights the farmers. They get to hear from the farmers directly in these tours. And I think this has been an opportunity to sort of think outside the box. How can I bring awareness to this really important thing that is our food system and economic development in our local environment? I mean, the RFBC focuses very regionally, right? But I think it's just trying to find opportunities to be creative and think about how else can I highlight these important things. And community members are responsive to that. They're learning about what the food system is and connecting directly from the producers, buying directly from them. Now they know this is where I can come get my fresh produce. I think as a part of that, I created a local food directory in El Paso County and Doña Ana County. And it's literally just like a booklet that lists all the local farms, food businesses, producers. It shares their information, their address, how they can buy from them, and even incorporated in like a Google map, so they can just follow the map and say like, okay, I'm looking for pomegranates. Are there any pomegranate producers in the area that I can go to? So really trying to open up, that those spaces where people can learn, but also connect to local produce and understand. The conversation always lands at health. It affects our communities, our families, how we feed them.
Really neat. Deanna, I wanted to ask you something. I think the last we spoke was at a previous food summit, and I remember we talking to you about labor and labor availability. And I know that at least in the past when we spoke, it was also kind of it was required for your ability to scale up is to get a good dependable workforce. I was wondering what gaps still exist in that. And, is that a significant gap in for you to be able to expand what you're doing in your operations?
Coincidentally, I met yesterday with about 6 from the workforce, and San Antonio, Austin, Valley, and other representatives. And my comment to them was, why do we have to look for guest workers? And you have a list of people who are looking for labor. So I'll backtrack a little bit and tell you that everyone who wants to scale up needs labor. It's impossible for you to scale it up without it. And training that labor costs money. And training someone for 6 weeks and having to pay them something like a living wage and losing that 6 weeks is difficult. And that can be repeated a couple of times. The season doesn't stop. The season goes on. So if I start in October and I train somebody for 6 weeks and they quit and I have to wait another 6 weeks, I just lost one whole season. So it's realizing that it's extremely difficult for the farmer to scale it up. And then the comment on the workforce for years has been, we have funding for training, but they have to ask. Well, if you don't know the program exists, how could you ask? So it's a disconnect between the different agencies. I think, I've proven it. I had 8 Guatemalan workers from 2024 to 25 season, and I have never grown that much product on our farm. It was wonderful. I had to pay a lot of money for that. It was kind of scary because it was a grant and it was a reimbursement, and I got reimbursed almost a year later, so that was kind of hard. But it proved what I think: it's labor, skilled labor. So if we figure out how to get skilled labor trained and then take them to the farmers, I don't see any farmer that's going to make money, especially if us that know how hard it is to work, that's not willing to pay a decent wage to someone that's going to help them make money. The problem is not in the price of the labor. The problem is the training. And then it needs to be rebranded. It's like it's the cooties to work on the farm. I'm telling you my age by saying cooties, right? But it is. You know, I don't want to work on a farm. Poor people work on a farm. You know, that's wrong. Good people work on a farm. It's healthy to work on a farm. It's honest work to work on a farm. So we just have to change the idea, figure out how to train them, because it's doable. I mean, yeah, policy has to change for the schools and for the industry, but there's a lot of people who do want to grow food. Look at this room. You have people here interested in growing food, and we want to grow food for our local communities. So we just need, and the programs are there, Mr. Rosales, the programs are there. It's connecting. What you're doing right now is connecting them. That is needed, and not just once a year. I mean, like more often. That communication with all of us to say, this is what we need, this is the funding that's out there, let's figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. Okay, you hear that? She wants this more than once a year. I don't organize it anymore, so I just like, okay, you guys do it. Yes, there you go. You know, and it's hard, right? Because part of the reason why you and I have worked together, I mean, I deeply respect what you do, because I know that you have a focus that is grounded by your values, right? You have put it out there that you want to provide a good job and a dignified workplace for your workers. I know that because I've talked to them. I know that other farmers in this room want the same. You also want to commit to your role as a steward of the land, right? Certified organic, all these regenerative practices, which you and I both know the system doesn't reward, right? And so how do you balance the growth of your enterprise with those values, with ecological sustainability, with your commitment to community, and your other social values that you bring? And where do you see those tensions arise as your business, as businesses grow?
I have a different purpose of what we do. I really believe in food security, and I think that we're very, very vulnerable. And so the only thing that I think is the solution is to teach more people how to grow more food. And so I push myself to that. It's important to me. I want to know what's in my food. I want to know why they're growing it, how they're growing it, and who is the purpose of it, right? We don't want to become millionaires. Most farmers that get into the industry don't want to become millionaires. They just want to live off the land and make a living. But the people that are selling you food, they're in it for the money. Those big companies that sell food to schools to industry. They're in it for the money. They buy it super cheap in other countries, they process it, and then they sell it. There's no way we can compete with them. That's one of the rules I think should be changed. They should buy local, and then we can compete. I think what pushes me also is that I think it's a career that is disrespected, and it's so important. Growing food is for the rich, the middle class, and the poor. We all eat. We all need to eat. And so that's so important. And so there's so many people that don't want to do it, and then there's the few that want to do it. Most of you know that Saul is the farmer, and I'm the chatterbox, right? But he used to grow for me. I'm the one that needs it because I have a bunch of autoimmune things, right? So I see him as growing and putting all this love into what he does, and then people look at it like it's not important. It is important. All of us the food that you served was delicious, and all of us eat. And so I think all of these farmers are high-ended chefs. Now, I have been a chef, and I know how food is important. I love food. Well, you can see, I love food. But we're not treated as high-ended chefs. You should take a lot of pride in when you grow your food, because people go to restaurants and pay $100, $150 for a steak, but they won't pay $150 for your steak. And your steak is probably better than that steak that's in that restaurant. So, long story short, what I'm trying to say is branding is important, and changing our attitude towards the people who want to grow our food is important. Policy needs to change to respect those people that grow the food, and to respect our land, of course, because it's the future of our kids, and protect our country. It should be grown here, sold here, processed here, and in order for us to do it, we have to help the people who want to do it here.
I don't think I've ever told you this, but when I met you guys, and one of the first interactions I had with you was in 2014, and I love Saul, right? I'm a fan, right? He's just, if you haven't met Saul Padilla, he's an excellent farmer, and we put him in an uncomfortable spot where he had to present something. I don't know if you remember this. It was in October 2014. He doesn't, he's very stoic, and we asked him to say a few words. And somebody asked the question, how long are you going to keep on doing this, Saul? And Saul says, I'm going to keep on doing this until I'm broke. I don't know if you remember this. And I thought to myself, I have never heard a farmer say that. Although it makes sense, right? Because he realizes that he takes this role as a public servant. And you have the same thing. You're not here to just grow food to sell, but you want to grow food as a relationship to your community. And I admire you both for that. I want to ask you guys both a couple of final questions, right? So we have a bunch of folks in this room, and if I gave you kind of your one dream relationship with any of these folks that you would love to connect with to be able to scale up the work you do, it could be somebody who can make a decision about food procurement, or who can change that policy to say, we're going to write our bidding process to restrict it to a 250-mile radius, which I heard is possible, right? That precludes everyone else from the outside and only makes it competitive for folks in the valley, for example. Or if you wanted to connect to a technical service provider or a farmer here who's interested in agritourism, who would that be and why? So I'll start with you, Ruby.
That's a really hard question because you need collaboration. And something I love about the Regional Food Business Center is that it really honed in on integrating and implementing a model that incorporated technical assistance coordination, direct investment, right? Through like grant opportunities and funding opportunities, but also regional collaboration. And I think you need all of them. You need, like, to make the wheel turn, it takes community and collaboration. And I think like folks in the rural areas really understand this. And you know, talking about values, entering a community where people are like their values are really important to them, and having conversations that are not just profit focused, right, is like you have to be really aware like where you're standing and the values that are important to them, and do work that enables that and supports that, and people see an alignment with like what you're trying to do as an organization that's trying to support food systems and agribusiness development. And so that's a tough question. I mean, something we did is develop a food system, food business inventory, right? But this took collaboration, right? Leaning on the expertise of Feeding Texas and how they have understanding and knowledge of distribution systems, and how we can bring that in to support and strengthen small to mid-sized agribusiness, right? So you need a lot of brains, you need a lot of like skilled people that are willing to collaborate and focus on the bigger picture that is strengthening local and regional food systems.
How about you, Diana? Who do you think you can connect with this food summit that'll help you progress in what you do?
I think the Texas Department of Agriculture is here. If they're not, they're missing.
There he is.
There you go. What I see is not 250 miles. What I see is Texas as a whole. And now I'm going to put my hat on for hope. The food hubs are a great idea. Texas has many different climates at different times of the year. We can grow the small farmers in all of Texas. That way we have food all the time from Texas, for Texas. And the food hubs and then the central kitchens that will help process, because the schools want them processed, the farmers can't afford to process that stuff. So you have a central kitchen that processes it for the schools. Now you can connect the farmer with the central kitchen, with the schools, and then Texas Department of Agriculture is statewide. So they should be helping all farmers, all mid-sized farmers, all hobby farmers to have access to what you just said, the technical support, the mentoring, the connection, the processing, all of those things under their umbrella, because that's what they're there for. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is set up for food, and I just went to a conference, and they were hosting that conference for all of the schools. So there you go. You have the small farmer, you have the schools and industry, you have, all the different ways for the Texas Department of Agriculture to connect. And that's what I think should be at a round table every quarter. How can we improve this, and what parts? Oh, and add the workforce, because they're not food, but they're a need.
Yeah. Okay, you saw a guy raise his hand over there, so you could connect with him in a bit. Okay, well, I just have one last question. So you put out your call to do this quarterly, right? But you and I both know that all of a sudden 10 years have gone by and we're still here. So now I want to ask you this. If we reconvened for the 2023 Food Summit, or the 2030 Food Summit, 5 years from now, and things had moved towards the vision that we're all trying to articulate here, that they're better for small farmers, that there are some opportunities for farm workers where they can find it, that we're farming in ways that don't harm the land and over extract our water. What would be different? on the ground, and what do we need to do now to that vision? And then I'm going to ask you from a perspective of a grower and a representative of producers, and then from your perspective as well, Ruby.
I think it also will help in the medical field, because I also agree, because a lot of the things that I've been medically using for food as medicine, I mean, sometimes you like when I injured my ankles, I don't do exercise anymore. So if you don't have exercise, what you eat should be less. And I love food, but food is medicine. Food is medicine, so we can address the medical need, the employee need, the food security need, and the community safety in case something happens. We all know during COVID, the stores were empty. Well, we should have many farmer connections, like you said, know where each farmer is in case we needed that food. So I see us in the future, this summit, the first one you did, and I think I've been to 3, is what I envisioned. A lot of community partners working together. When I first started Hope, that was my logo. It was hands together, because I believe that what we're addressing is not just farmers. We're addressing a big problem where we just get stuff from other countries and we disrespect our land, our people, our labor. And so those things have to change. And I think they're changing. Little by little, they will change. And with different organizations and partnerships that are in this room, they can continue to. And people like, business centers and nonprofits that mentor farmers and teachers that teach the kids for the future. It's the right ingredients. It's just going snail time. Maybe we need to figure out how to push it faster.
Yeah. Ruby?
Change is a long game, and I'm not saying farm tours are going to change the world, right? But I do identify that there's an element of education that I think needs to be, continued to be built for people to understand the importance of the type of food you eat, where it comes from. I think the farm tours have been an outlet for that, and I encourage you to follow us on social media. RG Colonias on Instagram, there's a highlight section with farm tours, so you can see how it's been going and see stuff that's happening out there in El Paso. But I encourage agribusiness owners to consider different business models, right? How can they turn their operation? They already are working, they want to sell more, right? But what can they change up in their business plan to get more of that profit in and for sustainability purposes, but I think also for education. And when we take people out to the farms, one, they tend to have this sense of peace fall over them because they're interacting with the land. They're also touching the vegetables, smelling them, tasting them. What is the difference between how this carrot tastes versus one you purchased somewhere else or in an urban area? There's a difference, a striking difference, right? And so educating and folks who are out in the community trying to connect community members with what it means to purchase organic. Why is her steak different than the one, at a restaurant, or what's the difference? And I think people learn through fun, fun is the best way to learn. And so I think there's a lot, when I think about the future, there's a lot more efforts to educate the community about these important things. Why does local matter? Why does clean growing matter, sustainable growing, right? How is it important for our future? How will it impact our kids' kids? And so there's engagement. I know from organizations that are trying to support agribusinesses and farmers, there's involvement. It's not just having a business center and waiting for people to come to me. It's being out in the community, having the conversations, trying to understand what the needs truly are, and bringing along people from the community so that they can learn and be as impressed as I have been from all the things that I've learned. I've started shopping at my local bodega. You know, it has impacted me, and it's really, really important. I think it's just sharing that and bringing people along so that they can also learn and be impacted.
You know, I think what you both just have articulated is the kind of frame of the Food Summit, right? To be honest, it's this, let's think in systems, right? Let's like not just focus about how well we can perform on a farm, because that only goes in as much as we can sell to whoever buys it. And then whoever buys it, like how do they prepare it and get into the food or the hands of the people who need it most? And arguably, you know, folks from the RGV need it as much as anyone, right? Because we're the ones where, you know, the kind of residue of agriculture, we live with the extraction of the water. We're the ones who have to deal with soil remediation and helping regenerate our lands. And, you know, one of the ways that we can move towards that is a change of mindset, right? I think that's the thing, right? And that change of mindset can come in a number of ways. It can come in training young people so that they grow up with that mindset, or sometimes it can just be creating a new relationship between a farmer and a government official, or a farmer and a school, right, where they agree on terms that may not necessarily only translate into a contract, but as you said, hey, I trust that you're going to come back and, you know, put value behind that and buy my things, right? And pay the premium price for this premium product I'm giving you. And unfortunately, of course, we're swimming upstream, you know, I mean, but as you guys have both pointed out, and through the video, I mean, the seeds have been planted, and Deanna, you said it, like, it's our job to cultivate it and, like, you know, water it so that it can grow faster, or give it the elements it needs so that it can be more robust and have a healthier foundation, and, you know, so that it yields more for us in the future. And I envision that, like, you know, in 2030, I almost get kind of giddy to think about where we could be if we set those conditions up. And then we have like young people in the room who will come up with bright new ideas that we can't think of, right? I mean, like, we couldn't imagine that home deliveries of groceries using Uber was a thing, right? 10 years ago.
Or the drone.
Right, or drones. But some of these young minds who have a vision, who can maybe think of options where they can subsidize their farms through social media, or, you know, like other forms of income.
For all the students in the class, I get called all the time for volunteers, and they kind of get scared to come volunteer on a farm because they think they're going to be outside. All farmers and nonprofits that are helping farmers, they have other things you can volunteer. And what you just said is true. That most of us, like myself, are not computer savvy. You can do volunteer work on the computers. You can do volunteer for many things that are inside that are considered business things in the farming. And the farmers teach their kids the same thing. It's a business. I went to a conference, and this keynote speaker said, when you go to school, to university, and you want to become a business person or an attorney or a CPA, and you came off of a farm, don't forget that that farm needs that CPA, needs that attorney, needs that social media person. If the new farmers are getting in, they need all of those people. And they are trying to be farmers and all of those people. So, you know, it is interconnecting the new way of farming, the cooperative, the aggregating, the food hubs, the university with the trainers. It's a community helping make change all together with the farmers. And remembering that the farmer is the key, it's the seed of all the things that we need. That's the seed. the food producer.
Yeah. Well, in our last minute here, I just want to kind of, take an opportunity to maybe plant that seed for 2030, right? Because, although we would like to meet more often, I think we also have to plan for the future. One of the things that I do think that, when you have an example like you of someone who doesn't want to subsidize agriculture by not paying your workers fairly, or by extractive practices like damaging the soil or excessive water consumption. The examples that we saw on the screen, right? When we have those kinds of farmers, the question is how do we subsidize that? Because all farms are subsidized, right? I mean, when I say subsidized, we have to take energy from somewhere and put it into the farm so we can get something that we can consume, that we can use for fuel or fiber. So here's my challenge. I mean, we have to subsidize it through our personal connection. There's a role for philanthropy in the room to help subsidize it where federal governments cannot or will not. There are community members that can step in to auxiliary role, volunteer, social media, pro bono lawyers. I know we could use that. Yeah, we can all benefit. So whatever skill set you bring, even if it's through life experience, you're welcome to come and talk to the panelists after, and we're looking forward to hearing from you all.
Well, I want to add one more.
Yeah.
Texas has a sign everywhere you go that says, adopt the farm, adopt the street, adopt the road. Why don't we adopt the farmer? Let's adopt the farmer.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well,